welcome to our World Cup special preview show. I'm your host, Zain Nabi. In this show, we'll be taking a closer look at Cameroon's chances at the World Cup. The indomitable Lions make a return to football's biggest stage. Cameroon will play in their 8th World Cup, a record number of appearances for an African nation. And they take on Switzerland, Serbia, and Brazil in Group G, with the first game on November 24. Joining me today to talk in a little bit more depth about it is my co-host Alistair Howarth and our resident Cameroon football expert, Francis Nkwayine. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Doing pretty fantastic and feeling World Cup.
Yeah, the World Cup fever is just starting to get ready. I know it's one of the most exciting times of the year when the squads are announced, when the heat is arriving. Yeah, I'm excited. But even still, it's crazy to think we're less than 2 weeks, less than 10 days away from kickoff.
I know, it's unbelievable when we're recording this. And Francis, we know you're closest to Qatar. You're in the Middle East at the moment, so won't be long before you're over there. There's nobody better in our team to talk about Cameroon and their chances. And I wanted to firstly get your impressions on the squad named by Rigobert Song. He's left out the long-serving centre-back, Michael Ngaju. How much of a surprise is his omission, given he didn't play the last round of friendlies that the Cameroon team participated in?
Well, firstly, you're right. I'm already in Dubai and feeling really like starting to catch the vibe. The Cameroon national team actually arrived here in the UAE tonight at some point in time. So the teams are beginning to, get set. So I guess preparations for the Cameroon national team will begin out in Abu Dhabi from tomorrow and through post-weekend as the players who play their last games with their clubs whatsoever and then join up. So it's really exciting times. But the 25 names were dropped last night, and one of the biggest surprises was the dropping of Michael Ngadu. He has been a mainstay of the team, considered one of the leaders of the team on and off the pitch. Very solid presence in defense through the years, and a very, very good player. So a lot of people expected him to be there. Like you rightly pointed out, given the last few call-ups for the last few friendlies, he hasn't been a part of the team, along with somebody like Zambo Ngisa. But everybody kind of expected, and the coach had said that there would be a return of these two in particular. But the night before the list was shared, dare I say, President Samuel Eto'o had kind of alluded to the fact that maybe not everybody who we all think should be a part of the team will be a part of the team. I know Michael personally. I know he is very, very disappointed at present. I have been able to try to reach out. For a lot of players, it's a phenomenal opportunity for you to be of service to your nation, but also it's a great marker in your career, and he's going to be missing out on that. But I think this team is looking to play a lot with young talent. I think that's one of the things Rigobert has been going on about a lot. And Christopher Wu has had a pretty decent season so far. And I think they're looking at making a partnership between himself and Castelletto. I just went blank there. I think Castelletto and Wu will become that central pillar or the two center backs who will hold. And then in Nicholas Nkulu, you have a very, very experienced, maybe not particularly fit, dare I say, player, but the sort of player that you maybe carry along should you need them to see out a game. You can add them. If you needed to play a 3, you're not counting on them for their legs, but they can read the game, they can be there, they can help calm the younger players if that's needed. I think that's the thinking. So that's what I would share at present.
Appreciate your analysis there, Francis, and we're going to get into a lot more on that. But something I wanted to ask you about was the team captain, Vincent Abubakar. He had a stellar African Cup of Nations, scored 8 goals. was the top scorer at that tournament. Are you happy that he has the armband?
Very much so. I think he's one of those people. Cameroon, we've always had a knack of producing pretty decent number nines. And here, I mean, that's old school speak. Like, our leaders usually come from the people who bang in the goals for the team. And Vincent has been that for this team for quite some time. I mean, people forget he's the one who scored the winner in 2017 when we won the African Cup of Nations. He's not new to the game. He's an older head. He's very experienced. He's unintimidating and unintimidated. So he's one of those kind of players who quietly gets the job done, I think, but he understands what it means to lead a national team that isn't, because we have these little things we forget sometimes. There is the politics of a nation that also must be factored in sometimes when our national teams step out to represent a nation. We are a nation that has a big Muslim north. We're a nation that also has a big Christian south. We have 213 different ethnic groupings, and people want to identify or at least feel like the team represents them. And sometimes when these decisions are being made, a lot of these things are being factored in, and we look at it and we talk strictly about football competence. And sometimes there's a little bit more than that. But I think in him, you have the competence, and he has been the captain through the reemergence and the resurgence of this national team. So to take the baton off him right now, or that armband, would have been a bit strange, because then you'd be asking who you would pass it on to. Maybe a person like Onana in goal, for example. But beyond Onana, you'd be hard pressed to find another player who's a surefire starter in that team. And nowadays, I'm a Manchester United supporter. Captains can stay on the bench and not even play at all. So,
Francis, do you want to know what you and Abubakar have in common?
our melanin.
You know me far better than that, Francis. It's the fact that you guys can bang in goals and you're full of confidence. And I like some of the lines from Abubakar early in the week. He was quoted as saying that the only difference between him and Egyptian king Mohamed Salah was that Salah's had the opportunity to play in a big club. Abubakar, who plays in Saudi Arabia, has said he's not impressed by Salah and he can do what he does. He said, and I quote here, "I just don't have the opportunity to play in a big club." Do you think he's right, Francis? Is he as good, if not better than Mo?
I think so. I know he's one of those players who, from a very, very early age, already demonstrated a propensity for elite football from very, very early on. He had the opportunity. I share this with you because I have shadowed his career for a very long time. He's a player we had identified many, many moons ago when he was still playing at Cotton Sport in northern Cameroon. And we had an option for him at Real Madrid, for him to join up with Real Madrid. The business of the time and the president of the club at the time wanted a cash deal, and he ended up at Valenciennes, So sometimes some of the business decisions that not necessarily created by the player, but more by the people around him, have carried him into spaces where maybe he had less of an opportunity to demonstrate his wares and his skill set. At Porto, his stats were very, very impressive. He did the business, and so maybe he just feels like if he had been surrounded by better players, playing in better systems, he would have shown more than he has done. Because wherever he has gone, he has been able to do the biz. But I'm a big Mo Salah fan. And I think the could-be's are plenty in football. The should-have-beens are even more plentiful. But very few are those who have done. And Mo Salah has done, is doing, and we must applaud him. But I can't take away a person's ambition for believing that they could have competed if their circumstances were different.
I like that, Francis. And you know what the nice thing is? you've never said that you could do better in better company. You haven't got quite the call up for Monday Night Football here with Sky Sports or NBC in the US or beIN in the Middle East or Supersport all
But this
across
is
Africa.
OTW. It's the bride. It's family. I love the smoke in my eyes.
Yeah,
I won't
even
get
though
that anywhere else.
I mean, even though we see you and Alistair popping on CNN here and there, giving your expertise, you still haven't forgot where you come from, and I like that. Ali.
How can I forget when I have you as my anchor wherever I go, even when I go to CNN? So don't style it out.
Keep it in the family. Keep it in the family.
Keep it in family.
All I'm saying is, Sky Sports is the cotton sport, and the on the whistle is the Real Madrid in this scenario. That's all I have to say on the matter.
Boom, 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 boom.
But
Love it.
first of all, Francis, I want to come back to something you said about the politics, because oftentimes we speak about politics in football as this really negative thing, kind of when there's pressures from outside. But I think this deserves a podcast on its own, and I'll leave it here. But the idea that no other country at this World Cup, no other continent in this World Cup from the countries that are involved have such a diverse country as Cameroon, but also some of the other African teams coming into it, even Senegal, Ghana, even Morocco and Tunisia, countries that aren't considered to be particularly diverse are in terms of the ethnic groups and languages. And it's something that a lot of our European brothers and sisters and a lot of the Asian clubs that have qualified don't have to deal with. And I think that's fascinating on its own. But also, Francis, I want to get your impression on this attack, because what a difference a year makes. Because I feel like a year ago, when I was looking ahead to the AFCON in Cameroon, I was looking at that forward line. I was thinking, Vincent Aboubakar, coming off an ACL injury, probably not at his best. Karl Toko Ekambi also, had a big kind of name coming into the Lyon team, but wasn't playing. You just didn't have that much. And then suddenly a year later, you have Vincent Aboubakar, who is, top goal scorer at the AFCON, Toko Ekambi scoring that incredible goal, to qualify you guys in the most dramatic fashion, probably in the history of football, to the World Cup. Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, who a year ago was the butt of every European football joke, and now suddenly is scoring at a higher rate than Lewandowski did at Bayern Munich. How encouraged are you to see these guys, let alone the introduction of someone like Brian Mbeumo, who just provides kind of unending pace and energy on the wing? How does that make you feel coming into the tournament?
Again, I'll say a similar thing to what I said before. These lads have been a part of, for some of these guys, for a person like Choupo-Moting, this would be his third World Cup. It's not new. The lack of respect or appreciation for his talent has not come from Cameroon. He was captain of that national team for quite some time. So we like him. We know what he can do. The question is if we had the formula that brought their skills to the fore. And that question still remains. It will remain for Coach Rigobert to figure out a system that allows these gentlemen to be at their deadliest. The hunger is there, the skill is there, unquestionably. And we look forward with a little bit more assurance, I believe, that the options are there also off the bench. There's experience in abundance, like people who will not be blinded by the lights, dare I say. It's 7 games to winning the World Cup. That's what President Neto keeps saying all the time. So all you're looking for really is 4 good games. You can afford to have 3 average games and have 4 good games, and you're winning the World Cup. And when he says it, I think a lot of people think like, oh, come on, you're shooting above your station. But that's his job to do as the president of the federation. It's why Rigobert will say the same thing. It's why the players, dare I say, echo the same message. We as Africans have to begin to believe we turn up at the World Cup, not just to make numbers. Lose or don't make it, not because you didn't try, but simply because it wasn't your day. We're no different from the other 31 teams that will be there. We have a right to believe that we can compete. And these guys have the talent and show it on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis at club level. So we have that opportunity. But there are 1 or 2 who maybe should have been in the squad. There are 1 or 2 who maybe are there just to be in the squad and may not play. But the fact that they factored all of this in made sure that they have a decent balance, that they didn't go with a completely new crop of players that maybe will be coming in and getting to know themselves, which is the challenge that a country like Ghana maybe are facing. That ability to say, these guys know each other. They've been in the trenches together. Some of them have won things with this jersey, and that's another conversation, the jersey, but let's leave that to the side. But they they understand what it means to carry the dreams of the 25 million Cameroonians and the 1 billion Africans who still hold Cameroon as that team that made Africa relevant in world football. So I don't think these guys lack ambition. I don't think they lack talent and skill. And we must stop making these presuppositions that because they don't play in the clubs or the leagues that we respect, that they don't have sufficient or the prerequisite capacity to make a wave. When Cameroon made its biggest wave in 1990, there were 3 players that played in Europe. So it's not the litmus test. It's not where you are and whether the world's sporting press knows you. It's whether you guys are prepared to say, live and let die. And that's what these guys look like they want to go to. And in Samuel Eto'o at the helm of the federation, and with Rigobert at the helm of the team itself, you have people who their careers speak volumes for character, and they're just trying to do some form of football osmosis with another generation and say, you have the talent now, it's just a belief. And so they keep talking about winning. And some of us used to look at it before and go like, that's a bit much. But now I'm starting to respect it, you know.
And I think there's something to be said about that. You know, when you look at your Germanys, your Brazils, your Italys, you know, they're the teams that they have a sense of entitlement. You know, they feel they're entitled to that World Cup. And you know, no African team has that, you know, quote unquote arrogance. And I think, you know, as much as often times, you know, you like you said, you see things and, you know, maybe what Samuel Eto'o is far-fetched is what he's saying, but it's about changing that mentality of saying, actually, we're entitled to this trophy. And
very true. In our country where we reside in England, as soon as the World Cup comes around, the talk about the World Cup is one of possession. It's theirs. They haven't won the World Cup since 1966 when they hosted it. So what gives them the right to believe as much as they do? Nothing. They have a league that has more foreign players than domestic players who shine in it, but they own it again. And there's that sense of belief that I think it's not a bad leaf to take out of another person's book. And that's all they're doing. And it may sound absurd because it's the first time we're hearing it said like this or delivered like this. But I think there's something to be learned from it and refreshing about it. Whether they make it or they don't, I think it's a nice attitude to have. When the Germans used to, or particularly East Germany and West Germany before they even reunited, when they used to turn up at games, very few people knew more than 5 of their team or their squad players. It was about the machine. And now these guys are trying to do the same. The Soviet teams or CCCP, SSSR from before the Russia days, they used to turn up. How many people knew the names of their players? But they made it sufficiently far enough in the tournaments with some respect. They weren't the kind of teams that were out of it by round 1. And our African teams, for very long, you would have one team that would progress. And so even when he says, all I dare I say tongue-in-cheekly, and he says the final will be Cameroon-Morocco, it's a wish, but I believe it's a good wish. And that's him saying, like, I hope the African teams do well, that everybody believes. He's the federation boss in Cameroon, but he traveled out to Ghana and delivered the same message to the Ghanaian FA, saying, it'd be nice for you guys not to be saying we just want to make up the numbers. Let's go there believing we can win. And if it's you who win, cool. I'd rather it was my country because it'd be nice for me getting another mandate. And I like the sound bites. I like the belief. I hope it takes root properly over the next 4 years. So by the time the 9 African teams are turning up in the North American World Cup, we're turning up there actually saying, this time, it's not far-fetched for us to have an all-African final. I don't think it's going to happen in Qatar. But I like the fact that 1 or 2 people think it's not an impossibility. So,
well, I'm so excited for that day, one day when it is an all-African final. You know, Francis, we've talked a little bit about Cameroon and the squad, the players, the team, what they need to get through. But I mean, I want to take a quick look at the teams you're up against, because I think Cameroon have one of the most difficult groups in the competition. You know, Brazil that look like they're back to their best from the kind of early 2000s, Serbia with, you know, Mitrovic, Blahovic at full strength, and a Switzerland team that, you know, dare we forget, knocked out France at the Euros, knocked out Italy in qualifying. You know, when you see those teams and you know the pedigree that they have, and you look at the Cameroon team, how are you feeling? How is your kind of confidence levels coming into this group?
I think it's always good to have the kind of competition that doesn't let you sleep at night. I know that the Cameroon national team are best when they know their backs are up against it. If we had the kind of group where we could sit down on pieces of paper and think, we should probably be able to beat these guys, or we should be able to beat these guys. Now, when I listen to people in the bars in Cameroon, and forgive me for visiting quite a few bars, because that's where we get the real information about the Cameroon's pulse. You have a lot of conversations around just how badly they think we could do because of the competition we're up against. So nobody's resting on their laurels. You know, the game against Switzerland, we have a little thing for Switzerland because of the number of Cameroonians who represented in Braille and Bolo. We'll have another Cameroonian boy who will be turning up for them. And there's a running joke about how all we need to do is, like, you know, they'll take his mom or take one of his aunties in the village and just, you know, keep her in a quiet room somewhere and let him know that if he does the business for us, then we can let her see the light of day again. You know, but the jokes aside, there is a great feeling that because the challenges are not easy, the approach to it cannot be one that is relaxed and kind of like we're just here to make up the numbers kind of thing. People don't want to be embarrassed. That Brazil squad, and to think there's possibly another 26 any one of us could name that didn't make that could turn up. They could probably field 3 teams at the World Cup right now, because this generation of Brazilian talent is truly phenomenal. I don't envy the job of the coach having to pick this 26. And then Serbia, phenomenal team, but again, not many stars. They have 5 or 6 names that will be known to people beyond their shores, but a solid team, a grouping of people, of individuals who have a style, a well-defined and well-rehearsed style of football. The talent is phenomenal. And because of that, that's the game I actually fear the most, because I think we have a history of suffering at the hands of countries like Serbia. But I believe if we have a decent opening game against the Swiss, I think I predict a win, personally. I think we're able to do like a 2-1 or something like that with them. And from there, we can see where things go.
I like it. And I think it's right. You know, this Cameroon side does its best work up against the wall, whether it's that, you know, World Cup qualifier away in Algeria against, you know, one of, you know, a really strong Algeria team playing in a stadium they haven't lost in 40 years or whatever. But also, I think lest we forget, you know, Cameroon's greatest success in recent years was at the 2017 AFCON, where, you know, they were not considered one of the favorites. They were considered, you know, not even to be amongst the best African teams. And yet we saw that grit, that determination, their capacity to kind of ride the much stronger teams to beat the likes of, you know, Ghana, Senegal, and Egypt in the final. And so I think, you know, Cameroon has that, you know, has that dog in them, kind of, and so I think that gives me a lot of hope. You know, Francis, like you were saying, you know, this is a very young team mixed with 1 or 2 kind of the older heads up front. You know, how much is Rigobert Song and, you know, to a wider extent, you know, Samuel Eto'o kind of considering the future of this team more than, say, the present? You know, we've seen really exciting young players like Drum Ngom in the team. You know, Christopher Wu is a really exciting one as well. Like you mentioned, you know, how much, you know, is this team kind of looking at perhaps maybe not 2022 is our year, but actually maybe the next AFCON, and, you know, like you said, maybe 2026. You know, what's the sense with the kind of age of the squad?
Well, I think if you actually look at it at present, median age, wow. Okay, before we get to the median age, I think there are about 3 players in this squad at present who or dare I even say maybe 4, who probably know this tournament will be their last tournament and maybe even their last call-ups. So even a person like a Vincent Abubakar actually knows that, okay, this is me, last chance to be of service to the nation. To a certain extent, dare I say, Triple Martin is young, but he has the ability to even say, okay, cool, I can make way for somebody else at present. And we know our brother in defense who came out of nowhere, Nicholas Nkulu, and returned. He knows this is like a cherry on top kind of moment. So everything they have been doing, and I think that's why the picking of, or the non-selection of Ngada speaks volumes for the plans that they have, because in Wu, you have a young player at 22 years old who could sit next to Castelletto at 25 years old, and you could imagine them forming a partnership that could serve the nation for another 5 years. So that means carry you to the next AFCON, the next 2 AFCONs, and another World Cup, technically. And by that time, then a Castelletto can drop off and somebody comes and sits next to a Wu, if he delivers. If you look out to the left in people like Nuhu, or to the right, they already have Mbaizo waiting in the wings to replace a Collins Fye. It speaks to the fact that they are planning the tomorrow already, but they're easing in the next generation of the players. People like Mbeumo are already in the team. Mbeumo can give Cameroon another solid 5 years. So again, it's carrying you through 2 AFCONs and 1 World Cup again. So if your core of your team is like that, I know they're actively looking or trying to identify a number 9. And there are many of those in the younger teams, in the under 20s, in the under 23s, and in the they call it the A-Prime in Cameroon. It's a hard one to describe, but it's like the team that sits underneath the national team. And they give them the opportunity to play Jamaica in the last or the farewell game before going off to the World Cup. Even that was another show of the fact that there's a baton being passed on already. And from that game, they take the striker from Coton Sport in Saibu. They take a Jerome Ngum, who's a young man I have known very well for many, many years so far. He's spent time in the US playing over there, returned to the domestic league, finding his feet. This World Cup will probably serve him well and open up a new chapter of his career, but make him also available for this national team for another 5 years. So I really think it's nice to see what they're doing. I like the median age overall, but the fact that there's a matching experience with youthful exuberance. It's good to see. A person like Zambo, nobody questions his talent. The challenge they have is, where do you fit all of this talent in? How do you get them to excel, to deliver at the very, very highest levels of their capacity? So that's what we look forward to seeing.
Francis, as always, I could listen to you over and over again. So much wisdom and perspective there. And no, people, he doesn't pay me any money, not yet. I have to say, before you go, Francis, go on, give us your prediction. How deep will Cameroon go in the tournament?
If I may have your permission to hold fire in game 1 first, and then come back to you with a quotable quote on day 3.
Why am I not surprised?
Why am I not surprised too?
So may I ask what your opinions are then?
Francis, you're the expert. We ask the questions, but I would like to see, it's a hard group. I haven't really done the brackets as well as I maybe should have.
2 teams come out of the group. Be nice.
No, I know.
Now Zayn is the one who's backtracking.
will
I
make
know.
it
I just, Switzerland and Brazil are hard nuts to crack, but I'm gonna say round of 16. There's my prediction.
Okay. I think we'll come out second in our group, and because we come out second, we'll be all fired up to go all the way.
All the way. All right, here we go.
Listen,
I'm
it's
getting
that
my
bulletproof
Wiltshire out.
Eto mindset. We need it. No
It's
inferiority
infectious.
complex. We need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's infectious.
All right, guys. If you agree with Francis, please hit us up on our social media accounts. OTW_podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Can't believe I keep forgetting it. I didn't forget it. I was joking. And then you can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just search for the On the Whistle podcast. And if you've come this far, leave a rating, leave a review, leave a comment, ask us a question. Otherwise, you're going to break Francis's sweetheart. Francis, thank you for all the wonderful wisdom. Alistair, always good having you ride alongside me. Enjoy the tournament, Francis. We're going to enjoy speaking to you from Qatar, hopefully at some point. And I'm sure it's going to be an unforgettable World Cup in a part of the world that the tournament is going to for the first time. So enjoy every minute of that.
Merci beaucoup. Shukran.
Ciao for now. Bye-bye.
Ciao.